All right. How is it going on, everybody? This is Ashwin, and in this episode, we are going to understand the concepts related to processes. So, let us get started. So, basically, I have here the memory map of a running process. So, let us understand first what a process is, and then we can proceed ahead. So, we know that we can write a simple program in programming languages like C, C++, and Python. Okay. And we also know that a program is a dead entity by itself, but whenever we execute that program, it becomes alive. Alive in the sense I'm talking figuratively. I'm not saying that some sort of magic happens and it comes to real life. Basically, when a program runs, it becomes a live entity and it has got its own space. And a program under execution, or to be very specific, an instance of a program under execution is known as process. So let us see what happens when we try to execute a program. So suppose you have written a Python program, and the program name is test01.py. So we know that we can invoke a Python program in multiple ways. We can either invoke it from the IDE or we can invoke it from the command prompt. And that is true for the other programming languages like C and C++ too. So we have got the IDEs like Genie and code blocks that can automate that build as well as execution process of any C or C++ program. So whenever we execute a C or C++ or Python or any other program, then the executable translation of that program is loaded into the main memory of the computer. So when I say main memory, it means RAM. Okay, so that program's executable version is loaded into the main memory, and that executable version or the instance of program under execution is known as a process. And all the programs that can be launched from the command line or from the IDE or even in the background, they create a process in memory. So that is the memory footprint of a program. And we know that there are various commands we can check the program under execution. For example, in Windows, we can check the process manager. So let me try to open that process manager utility. So my Windows skills are a bit rusty and I'm not sure how to open that utility of monitoring processes from this taskbar. So I'm just going to hit Ctrl Alt Delete and it is going to show me the option for task manager. So this is the task manager of my Windows system. And here I can see the processes under execution. So these are all the processes that are currently running. So as of now, there are 5 user level desktop apps that are running. The first one is Camtasia 2020. This is the editing program that I'm using to edit these videos. So this is the window for Camtasia editing program. Then we also have Camtasia Recorder 2020. So this is the window for that Camtasia Recorder. Here you can see it like that. And let me minimize it. Then we have Microsoft Whiteboard where I'm recording everything. Okay, so here we have the Whiteboard app, and then we also have the process for task manager. So this one is the task manager, and then we also have the Windows Explorer. So Windows Explorer is the program where I'm browsing everything. Okay, so I have got another folder opened, Win32 multi-threading resources, and I have opened this directory in Windows Explorer app. So these are the 5 user level desktop apps that are running. Now there are more than 100 background processes that are running currently on this computer. So I have installed a lot of programs like Boink utility, So it is going to scan for the possible alien signals for the SETI project. And then I have Canon Quick View menu. I also have a lots of daemons. So basically there are processes for Google Drive, GOG, and Dropbox. So all these services, they will have their own processes, and all of them will be running in background. And you won't be able to see a graphical user interface window for such background processes. That is why they are known as background processes. And these 99 are Windows processes. So these 99 various processes, they belong to the Windows operating system services. So now let me go ahead and close this, and we can find similar stuff in Unix-like operating systems too. So let me open a console for a Unix-like operating system, FreeBSD. Or we can even log into my Raspberry Pi, which is currently running Raspberry Pi operating system, which is a derivative of Debian Linux distribution. So let us log into my Raspberry Pi. The password is the default password, raspberry. So here there are various ways we can see the processes under execution. The first command is ps, and it is going to probably show us the user level processes, or the processes that are initiated by the current user. So now there are only two processes. The first one is the bash shell, through which we have logged into this Raspberry Pi computer, and the second one is the process ps itself. So this command is also a process. Now if you want to see the list of all the other processes, we can just say ps-ef, and here we have the list of other processes. We can even use the command ps-ag. So ps-ag, and here we have all the commands. Now there are a few other utilities. So the first one is stop. It is going to show us the most resource intensive processes currently running on this Linux machine. And by the way, you can use all these commands in all Unix-like family of operating systems like FreeBSD, HPUX, and any licensed Unix variant, or any Linux distribution, or any Mac OS version. Now, if you want a bit of more graphical user interface or fancy thing, so it's not a graphical user interface, it is just a fancier output of the running processes. So here we have the htop utility. So here we can see the commands and the programs and processes that are running, and we can actually get a very nice view of that, and we can just go ahead and check all the processes that are running. So this is all about checking the currently running processes in all the major operating systems like Unix-like operating systems and Windows. Now, whenever a process is loaded into memory, it actually creates a memory map, something like this. Okay, so let me open the highlighter, and it actually creates a memory map shown in this image. So this is the memory map of a process. Now there are certain parts in that memory map. So basically there is this free area, which is not actually allocated for any particular purpose. Then we have got stack. We know that stack is a data structure, and in case you want to learn more about stack, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I have uploaded a lot of videos related to stack and its programming with various programming languages like C, C++, and Python. Then we also have another data structure known as heap. So I have also uploaded a lot of videos about heap on my channel. So please do check out those videos. Then we have the data area, and finally we have the text area. So these are the four areas, and I can actually explain why stack is used in a process thing. Okay, so stack is actually used for storing the temporary data, as well as if you are going to jump into some sort of subroutine within the same process, then the stack is going to store the last address of the calling program. So whenever the control wants to invoke the calling process, it is just going to pop the address of that calling process from this particular stack. So this is what a process looks like when it is under execution on any normal computer. So most of the computers have got these days a storage thing, then a RAM. So mostly the program text is stored in the storage, and whenever we execute that stored program, it becomes a process in the memory. Now a program can have multiple instances running, and every instance will be treated as a separate program. Now let us go ahead and check the state diagram of the process. Now this is the state diagram of a process. Now we can roughly divide this thing into two parts. So the first part is where that process is not alive yet. So it is still in the phase of program. It is not a complete process yet. And this is that part where that process is not alive or it is dead. So when we launch a program, the process corresponding to that particular program is created. So this is the initial state or the beginning state of any process. And after that, the process comes to life and it is loaded into the main memory or RAM. So here besides main memory, I will also write RAM. RAM. Sorry for the handwriting. And then the process becomes actually a waiting process. So it may be loaded into the main memory, but we know that the capabilities of a processor, they are limited. So nowadays we have multiple core processor, and each processor has got many cores. So currently my present CPU, that is Intel i7 7700K, is an 8 core CPU. Okay, it means that there are total 8 cores in that CPU. So the CPU is capable of running at least 8 processes concurrently. And rest of the process might be in the memory, but they may not be running. So this is the second part or the second set of states. So here the program is in the main memory. Now, if main memory doesn't have enough space for storing our program or process, then it is in the page file or the swap space area of your computer. So basically this page file or swap space is a space reserved in the storage. So waiting process could be turned into a running process, and a running process could be blocked because it is trying to acquire a resource, but it couldn't actually get a lock on that particular resource. So a block process might become a waiting process, and then it could actually become again a running process. So waiting process could also become swapped out and waiting process, and block process, if it is not executed for a long time, then it could become swapped out and black process. So in this state also, the process is alive, but it is not in the main memory. And finally, the process can be terminated. And when we terminate the process, it means that the process is dead. So this is all about the states of the processes. So now let us try to understand what a thread is. So basically this is the another representation of the diagram of a process under execution. And this diagram is specifically known in this context as the single threaded process. So here we have the area of that process. So this is all the memory area of that particular process. So here we have the part for code, and here we have the part for data, and here we have the part for files. Now all this part, it can be shared. So it is shareable part, code, data and files. And whatever part we have here, that is known as register and stack. So that is something that we cannot share. So a thread is also known as a lightweight process. So basically threads are sub-processes within a single process. So nowadays almost all the processors comes with another additional feature. It is known as multi-threading or hyper-threading. So a process has got multiple physical cores that we have seen already, and each core is able to handle a single process and multiple threads. Okay, so we could have a 4 core and 16 thread processor. 4 core and 16 thread. So it means that one core can handle one process as well as 4 independent threads concurrently. So a thread can also be defined as a lightweight process, and a process is also defined as a heavyweight process. Now the threads run within the same memory area for the process that has launched it. So suppose this is the memory diagram of a multi-threaded process. Then as we have seen here that the code, data and files, they are the shareable resources between threads. We cannot share the registers as well as stack for a particular thread with the other thread or any other process for that matter. Now the main advantage of threads is that the time to switch between threads is less than the time taken by the processor to switch between processes. So suppose if you have certain set of tasks that are related to each other, then you can definitely open a process in the memory, and then you can create relevant threads within the same process. So this is all about processes. So we can use multiple type of frameworks for creating threads and processes. So the first combination is GCC and C programming and pthreads library. So we can create threads using pthreads library with C and GCC compiler. We can also use GCC compiler and C++ and pthreads library. We can also use the GCC compiler and C++ and native threads of C++. So they are just known as threads. We can also use Microsoft VC++ compiler and C++ as programming language and Win32 threads. Finally, we can use Python programming to create multiple processes and multiple threads. So this is how we can use various frameworks and programming languages in order to create threads. So stay tuned to my YouTube channel in order to see all these tutorials on multi-threaded programming with C, C++, and Python. Thanks a lot for watching this video lecture. Do let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thanks a lot once again, and I will see you next time.